right, welcome everyone to the workshop. Just to make sure everyone's in the right place, this is Soup to Nuts, building a game with Ruby. I will post code just in case anyone gets behind in the primary Discord channel. I have one request, everyone. If y'all could just put one of your favorite 2D games or a 2D game that you remember or really cherish or think is really cool. You saw a demo of it and you're like, that looks like a really cool game. That would be really helpful, especially for the second half of the workshop. And I think this is being streamed live, so for anyone that has questions in the Discord, post them in the Discord, and I would appreciate the participation if you can also put your favorite 2D game inside of the thread. Yes, sometimes NetHack, Open, Stardew Valley, these are all great games. Mega Man X, that's one of my favorite. Undertale is awesome. I'm sorry? So the thread is located, if you go to Workshops, Soup to Nuts, and you'll find the two threads there. Pre-workshop wish list, if there's any questions you have, you can post it inside of the pre-workshop wish list or in the general chat, wherever you'd like. I'll try to keep an eye on them. Chrono Trigger's so awesome. All these games, this is great. All right, awesome. We're gonna start with a little bit of code, and then I'll talk about some of my game dev experience and kind of just flip-flop between the two for the first half, and then we're really going to dig into some of the more advanced game dev topics out there, and hopefully there'll be a lot to learn during this workshop. Quick show of hands, who is completely new to Ruby, the language, complete beginner? Okay, seems like everyone has some experience. Over 2 years of experience with Ruby? Cool, all right, so some of the entry stuff will be introductory language specific stuff we'll be able to move through pretty quickly. And then 5+ years in Ruby. All right, 10+ years in Ruby. All right, cool. I fall into the, let's see, I started doing Ruby in 2013. So just under 8 years, and I think it's something that we all felt when we first started using Ruby was just this, I don't know, this magic with regards to the language, and it's hard to put a word on it, but there's this aesthetic to the language that just makes it a joy to use, and over a 10-year period, that magic kind of falls away, and at least that's what I felt. And what I'm hoping is during this workshop, you'll find that magic again. It's really, really important. It's something that I found that I really cherish about the language. All right? So the instructions are there. The assumption is that everyone has a window that kind of looks like this, up and running. Hopefully. All right. And have it running. Go to your code editor. The source code for what you're seeing on the left side is located inside of a directory called My Game. And then there's another directory in there called app, and then a file called main.rb. That's where the source code is located. Everyone good there? Yes, hopefully. All right, with the game running, you should be able to change a line in it, save it, and it should hot load the game. This is a starting point. If you get stuck, if you're blocked, let me know. Give you all another 30 seconds. Let me check the Discord. Lots of awesome games. That's great. Can you make the text larger on the screen? Yes, I can. How's that? Is that good? The game screen will be tiny. We're not going to be reading much text on that side, but I definitely want the code screen to have a good amount of information. All right. So let's write a little hello world. What I want you to do is I want you to replace the code inside of the tick function. This tick function is the entry point for the game engine. And what it does is you can think of it as your top level event loop. And you can see this, the speed of the event loop, which is super tiny, of course, but it runs at 60 hertz. The rendering of the game is independent of your simulation update, which is what's being executed at 60 hertz. And the number that you will see is the frame that the game is currently on. So you can change the code, update your code to look like the line above. What this line is doing is the tick function gets a environment class called args. And inside of there's a property called outputs. Inside of that, there's labels. And we're sending a tuple into that construct. What this tuple represents is the X location of the label, the Y location, and a string. Args.state is another property that contains your tick count. And by doing that, you should get a label that presents the tick count. So far, so good, hopefully. In the game itself, we have a heads-up display. So if you go to your game and press your tilde key, you're going to see a heads-up display come down. You can click Show Menu and press Reset Game, and it will reset your game. You can also use this to eval Ruby code. So you can do 1 + 2, and it will actually evaluate the code. It's the key right next to the tilde key, the squiggly thing. Did it come up? For those that play video games, this is your Quake console. It's very reminiscent of that. You have full access. This console has access to your coding environment. So if I type in say hi and do that, I can actually type say hi, and it will say hello to me. All right? So we've got a label. You know how to use the console. You can use that to reset the game. Any questions so far? We're gonna do some more fancy things. Yes, sir.
Can you zoom in again on your text editor?
The question was, can I zoom in again on my text editor? Is it a good size? More? All right. Cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Let's do some cooler things. We're going to render a square onto the screen. So the same concept is there. You give it a tuple. You have your X and Y position. In this case, this right here is the square's width and height. I promise it's going to get much harder. We'll start slow. We'll start speeding up over time. All right, let's look at another render primitive. This render primitive is called a border. So if you notice, there's our fancy little border right there. Uses the same constructs, tuple. I'm going to put one more in there, and then I'm going to put this code on Discord also for those that are working on this remotely. You can also render a sprite. This one takes in one additional property, which is the path to your sprite. If you look at your My Game directory, you're going to see a sprites folder, and then the sprites folder has a bunch of sprites in there for you. All right, this is what it looks like on the screen. I'm going to post this code in the Discord. And let y'all catch up for those that need to catch up. While people are trying that out, let me show you what this thing is capable of doing. So here's one of our tech demos that I've put together in the past. It is collaborated with an artist. So using those concepts that you saw in that we just wrote down, you can build a game that looks like this. You've got overlays, we've got ripple effects on the water. You'll see the lily pads, they have kind of a physics aspect to it. Of course, Ryan C. Gordon, he's one of our the partners on Dragon Ruby. He, of course, ended up building Tetris. So this little tutorial goes through the creation of Tetris at some point in time. There you go, you've got some blocks showing up. As far as credibility of the game itself, I have a game released on the Nintendo Switch that is built using Dragon Ruby. There's a link somewhere, right? Is that the link? No, it's just a picture, of course. Nintendo Switch, dark room. There we go. We have a Wikipedia page too. Isn't that awesome? So there you go. This is on the Nintendo Switch, available today. This game was also released on iOS and Android. It went viral. You can actually do a dark room. The New Yorker, that's kind of crazy, right? New Yorker contacts you about a game. So got published in the New Yorker. So there's some legitimate credibility to building games using Ruby in this ridiculous game engine where your render API is a bunch of arrays. There is another way to render. You can use hashes. I'm going to post this in the Discord so you have access to it. When will the ensign be released? I'm working on it. One of the questions was when I have a pre-sequel, and someone's asking when will the pre-sequel be released? Of course, wrong update, and I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I promise. Let me remove that. I know I missed the syntax. Did I forget an end somewhere? I know I did. There we go. Move this code. Voila. All right. So what you have here did it work? Yes. All right, same attributes. For sprites, doing a little bit of rotation, alpha, setting colors. The label has some additional properties too. We can look at those look at that code real quick. So you can pass it in an array, expand out to using a hash. And for those that want to use classes, as long as your class responds to the same properties, you can also use a class. All right. Initially starting out, using the array and tuple approach allows for very rapid prototyping. As you add additional properties, you want to migrate to using hashes, get some good naming in there. But there you have it. You have labels, solids, borders, and sprites in their hash variants. Any questions so far? Yes, sir. Thank you for heading to the mic.
So every time we, well, this tick method is being called continually. And
Yes.
I guess we're always shoveling new arrays or hashes into these destinations, I guess. So if like every time there's a tick, are you starting from scratch? It seems like you are.
You are. You are
Okay.
starting from scratch.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And the second question is, where is the documentation on like all the stuff like this in args that's available?
Okay. Yes. So first question was, with regards to outputs, are you starting from scratch every time? The answer is yes. This allows you to reason about your game and not have to worry about deleting things that are already rendered. You got a clean slate coming through every time. There is a variant called static _, which will retain your render primitive and reference it by, or point to it by reference. A little bit more of an advanced API. It's there for static content. If you want to generate a lot of stuff on the screen, you can use that as a variant. As far as docs are actually located locally in the docs directory. They're also available online at docs.dragonruby.org. But all your docs are available in your local environment. All right? docs.dragonruby.org. These are the general render APIs. There's a ton of sample apps that we'll go through. In fact, let's do one. Any more questions before we move to the next part?
Where's the A key for?
I'm sorry?
A key in the last one?
Right, the question is, what is the A key in the hash? And A stands for alpha. So R, G, B, and A, that's your alpha key. You'll notice here that we've got colors. You can add the A symbol to each one of those to provide an alpha property. So we can say 128 on the alpha, and you'll see the transparencies for each one of those things. Question, yes?
Yeah, just a quick question on syntax. I know that it's running Ruby 3.0, but like endless method syntax doesn't seem to work. I was just curious, is there a mismatch there?
So the question was that it's running Ruby 3.0, but the endless method syntax doesn't seem to be working. It's running Ruby 3.0. So at the top level of that polyfill, and it's primarily for portability. And I can discuss in detail for that. But we baseline on that syntax, and then we have expansions and customizations to the engine to provide all the rendering APIs and whatnot. I need to look at how difficult it would be to get that syntax supported, the endless function syntax. I'm keeping an eye on the open source repos in general, and we synchronize on a regular basis. We actually upgraded to 3.0 pretty recently. So I know 3.1's in the pipe. I just got to look at to see when those things are going to be incorporated into NRuby. Any other questions? Cool. Okay, so let's have you all play around with the sample app. If you go to the samples directory, you can open up in Finder, and you'll see a samples directory. You want to go to 99_genre_arcade. And in there's a sample called Flappy Dragon. You want to copy all of these files over into your main directory and start it up. All right, I'm going to do that right now. Probably want to close it out. I've never tried doing a full swap out like that. Apply to all, merge. And then when you start it back up, you should see something like this. Oh. Did I put it in the wrong place? That's a what? I put it in the wrong place, didn't I? What did I replace? Where am I? No, I'm in the right place, I think. Yeah, maybe. It's pretty bad when the guy running the workshop demo fails like that, right? I promise this is supposed to be that easy. Copy. Well, let me delete what's there. There's probably a shell command to do this. Someone knows it off the top of their head, I know. Move to trash, samples, genre arcade, Flappy Dragon, copy, go back, wrong file, paste, please work. There we go. You should be able to flap. Who wrote that troll message in there? I swear. There we go. Cool. So load it up, and what I want you all to try is, I'll give you all, let's say about 5-10 minutes. Play around with the numbers in there. Start up the game. There's a bunch of random numbers in there. Change them. Try to get the dragon to fly upside down if you want, or shoot fireballs, or any variation of that. The code itself, it's not using anything really outside of created a game class, but your entry point is still your tick method. And then if you look at your tick method, that is the order of execution in your game. So try to start it up. Yes, I hear, that's good. Music to my ears. And yeah, play around with the properties. See what you can break while it's running. If you want the game to reset automatically, at the bottom of the file, you can type gtk.reset. That way you don't have to open up the console every time, but it's up to you. If you don't have that line, it'll retain whatever game state is currently in the game and update that in place. Let me check the Discord, see if we got any questions on there. Favorite 2D games, Wario Land, like it. 2D Baldur's Gate, yep, Limbo. All right, we're going to talk about that stuff, good. All right. And while you're playing around with that, I'll set up the next part of the talk. All right, so there's a function called, no, there's a function called calc game over. Comment that line out. That's a great way to get a high score. There's also something called, I think it's like gap, wall gap size. Increase that to like 600. That will really make the game a lot easier. But yeah, that's the beauty of it, you know? I'm gonna turn on easy mode. Let's just return false from game over all the time. you'll see some APIs in there that may look unfamiliar. Use this opportunity to kind of think of questions, and we'll come back together and talk about some of the interesting aspects to it. All right? Pay no attention to the man at the podium. Y'all are making faces at me, aren't y'all? All right, that's good. All right, cool. One of the questions is how do you debug console write lines and put things in labels. You can also use the heads-up display to print out things directly from the console. So an example would be, and I'll get, there we go. You have access to your game state using state, $state. So you can get information with regards to there. Skadoosh. That's going to get really old. There we go. One other aspect of debugging, especially in video games, it's really hard to debug something at 60 frames a second. It's very, very difficult. You'll hit a breakpoint, and then you'll find out that, oh, I'm 2 seconds ahead of where I need to be. 120 continues later, you're back where you need to be, and then you realize that the corrupted state was introduced 30 milliseconds ago. So a lot of what you want to do with regards to game dev is to make the game your IDE. So add your labels, add debug constructs directly into the game, so it gives you the information you need. That's one of the reasons why we have this heads-up display. Okay. Do I have examples of using the game as your IDE? Yep. I can kind of show that. One of the samples is we've got some physics and collision samples, and I'll run this one. So here's your game, and you can draw your auto tiling right on the screen. So imagine building your platformer in such a way where it's like, no, I actually want to update the landscape right in game. Right? Let me do another one. This is a game I built for a game jam. It's called Klepto Frog. It's about a little frog that steals all the mugs in an office while everyone's away. And then the people in the office have to come back and get their mugs back. So those are supposed to be mugs, and that's supposed to be a frog. And he can swing his little tongue. Woo! He bounces around. Boop, boop. And so I've got God mode in here. You press G, and it takes you where you can move around wherever you want. You'll see all the collision boxes, these like little gray areas here. So I can throw in some collision boxes there. It says the map's been exported. Turn off God mode, and now we've got secret collisions. So this is the idea of making your game your IDE. I'm going to go back into God mode. Let's zoom out and kind of see the entire landscape. God mode. But that's an idea of how you can turn your game into the IDE. Poor little frog. This game was written in about 800 lines. Took about a day or two. And yeah, it's surprising how productive this environment can be. One of the questions was, so how do you run tests? Tests are, that's a very good point. That's a very good question. There are testing capabilities inside of the engine. For unit testing, there's a samples directory in there. You'll see something under advanced debugging. And in there you can see kind of the format of the unit tests themselves. You run your test by providing it your game directory --test and then your unit test endpoint. Testing like that it's one of those other things like debugging at 60 frames per second is challenging, as one of my friends would say. It's a challenge. Same thing with testing. Testing units of your code will help you with that feedback loop, but one of the testing capabilities I ended up adding to the engine is actually called replay. So we have our Flappy Dragon game here. I'm going to open up the menu and I'm going to do record gameplay. So this is going to record, hopefully, me having a high score. Oh yeah, I turned off game over. That's awesome. Okay, so I'll press stop replay. And then the replay is there, so I can replay now, right? Now I'm going to change the code and add the game over logic back in. And we'll actually see if, actually wait, let's do last replay. Did I forget to save? I probably forgot to save. Well, let's try one more time. Record gameplay. All right, so I should have gotten a game over then. Recording.stop, I'm going to call this amir.txt. Okay, and let's try running the replay. Okay. Now I'm going to go into the code. And calc, game over. Let's uncomment that line, and then try the replay again. That's obviously a bug. I definitely made it past that. So the interesting is that this txt file is just a text file. So you can think of it as you've been able to recreate this bug, send the file to a dev, they can run the game and exactly get the exact repro steps. Okay? Can we look at the file? We sure can. There you go. Just takes a look at your keyboard input, and you get your seed is an RNG that's consistent for every game. Because if your game has RNG, you want to make sure that that value is consistent. This is another reason why unit testing kind of explodes. Everything looks good in your unit test, and then suddenly you find that a specific RNG representation causes a exit to your dungeon to be off the map. But this is one of the reasons why we've got this replay capability in here.
Amir,
question.
just a quick question.
Yes.
Just curious, like in Elm, there's a time traveling debugger. So this is really cool where you could like go back and forth. Is there any way to do that in here where you want to pinpoint, when you're
Yep.
crashing there?
So the question was that Elm has Elm's ability to, it's got this concept and data structure state that allows it to rewind in time to a previous point in the game state. And it's a powerful concept, and it's something that we actually have a facility to do. It's based off of hash array map trees. And the thing is that when rubber meets the road, especially with how Dragon Ruby and the way we're authoring the system, when rubber meets the road, this has got to work. I can kind of show you some of the stuff in our announcements. I made an announcement about it. Rewind. From Amir. Rewind, please. Something, maybe. 981 pages. Who is this guy? Speed up and rewind through time. Nope. We have a demo where I show Flappy Dragon, and you get the game over, and then you can rewind and start playing again. But there's a lot of work to be done there. There's a lot of work to be done there to make sure it's performant, so that it can accept everything in org.state. state. Okay? Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Why does the background music keep replaying? I see it gets set on click 1.
The background music keeps replaying because the sound APIs that were originally created when we built this were pretty horrible, and we haven't updated the sample app. But there's an additional sound API that's available that allows you to have finer-grained control of when background music starts and stops. Let me show you what that sample looks like. So if you go in the sample, so the line of code that is currently running, just for context, is this line right here. So to play background music, you can set it to that on tick count 1. There's a way to stop the background music.
But my question is more, the other sounds use the same command, like the plus sound.
That's true.
What's different about those two to make one repeat and not?
Correct. So the reason the question was that, well, the other ones use the same sounds collection. What's the difference? The difference is that this is an ogg-vorbis file. So by convention, OGG files, ogg-vorbises are set on replay. It was a limitation, and it's good for simple things like that. But if you go to the advanced audio, you go to the audio mixer. This is a cool demo. I love the music in this. You've got full directional sound. Gain, pitch, looping. You can pause it, unpause. So, such a great song. So yeah, if you want to see some of the more advanced audio APIs, the audio mixer sample app will give that to you. Okay. The standard license, which is what all y'all have access to when for the workshop, our pro license actually allows for sound synthesis too. So there's no dependency on Super Collider. There's no external dependency whatsoever. And you can actually generate different waveforms. I actually took, this is the actual waveform for a bell. there's no WAV files. That's done completely through setting a hertz for a sound thing, and there you go. So pretty cool stuff there. Somewhat niche. I don't expect many people to do sound synthesis, but if you do, we've got a very accessible way to do that. All right. So everyone played around with their Flappy Dragon, right? If you want to release your game, there inside of the My Game directory, you're going to see a folder called metadata, and then there's a game_metadata.txt file. You fill it out. Your dev ID will be your itch login. You need to create your game page if you want. And you don't have to necessarily release, but this information is required in the file. And after you do that, you can do drag in Ruby, publish, -- only package. No, it's my demo install. That's what, I'm yelling at myself. I put that message in there. But when you run only package, it will generate your PC, Mac, Linux binaries, and it'll generate your WASM build also. Okay? So you can see that, an example of that online. So if you want to upload it to itch, you can. You can also just send it over an email, zip it up and send it in as an email. But here's your HTML representation of it. Maybe I'm better in the web version. Nope. Nope. Cool. So we know how to do render primitives. We've got some ideas on how to do tests and replay. Yes, sir? The itch wizard? There's an itch wizard? I see. So the question was was the itch wizard us? I wasn't even aware there was an itch wizard. That's cool. For using the itch wizard, if you do drag and Ruby publish -- only package, you'll see a builds folder show up, and then you can use that to upload the game. But when we hit a breakpoint, no pun intended. When we stop for break, if you can post a link to it on the Discord or a screenshot so I can take a look at. Oh, that itch wizard. Yeah, there's an itch wizard built in. I forgot we added that. So yeah, there's an itch wizard built in that will walk you through the process.
So instead of just putting it'll help you get that file.
Yes. So the one caveat is that this itch wizard assumes that your game is in the My Game directory. So if you put it in another directory, you've went into pro mode and you're on your own with going through the terminal. Yeah, so we have an itch wizard. That's amazing. This thing's awesome. All right. So let's see. Now we're going to do something a little bit crazier. Everyone has a good feel of the code. Let's see what this looks like in VR. Developing for VR is kind of annoying at times. You have to look through there's a small space right here, and you got to use that. This is going to all be recorded, isn't it? That's fantastic. Create Guardian. I'm touching the ground, so I can set my boundary. I'm going to confirm. You'll eventually see something on the screen, I promise. I was playing this one game. It was called Red Matter, and you end up having to put together like a little robot inside, and you're given these instructions on a piece of paper. And of course I went, I don't need this piece of paper, and I threw it away. Flies off in the distance, and then I found out that I actually need the instructions. And you see me like going like this in VR going, what the hell is it? And anyone looking at me was like, what the hell are you doing in there? You're gonna get a lot of those experiences like that. Can everyone see it casting now? So here I go looking through my little peephole. I'm gonna press this button. Dang it, missed. There we go. There's a full screen somewhere. There we go. All right. So now we can see this game. Whoa, look at that moving in and out. That's crazy. That's a nice little party trick. Let's turn on the sound. Well, everyone knows what the sound sounds like. All right, let's see if I'm better in VR. I can do this. I can do this. All right, so that's cute. Oh, my glasses. Oh, crap, it's stuck to my head. All right, there we go. All right, so we lost the image, maybe. Did we lose it? Oh, yeah, I'm not in the Guardian anymore. I'm looking somewhere else. Let me reorient. Let me put it over here. This does not bring me joy, I promise. Stationary boundary, confirm. We're working on it, I swear. All right, put that over there. Cool. So how about we do this? First thing I'm going to do is get rid of that game over. Calc game over, get rid of that. Take that video game. There's input delay, so I'm really glad I got rid of that. Okay, so that looks good. I'm gonna make one more change. You'll notice that everything's hot loaded. Now let's see what this looks like. Headset on again. Everyone can see? Sweet. All right. Look at that. There you go. So you've got full 3D fidelity. And the changes to the code, we can take a look at the code again. Bye-bye, dragon. My glasses. VR is one of those things where having a pairing is really, really great. One person can just have the headset on, and then the other person can code and look at the screen. It's surprisingly productive. It's really nice. As far as the game, the primary property that's been added is Z. So you add the Z property, and you get your three-dimensional fidelity for the sprite itself. You've got Y rotation on your angle and X rotation that allows you to rotate around each one of the axes. And so what I'm doing is I'm creating the sprite, rotating in 90 degrees, and creating the four areas of that sprite. But outside of that, as far as the pop in and pop out of the cool title, this is a fairly common mathematical function of using sine, because your sine wave goes from 0 to -1, I think. It oscillates between -1 and 1, yes. So based off of that, you've got your ratio, and you can use that and multiply that percentage by the max distance you want it to go. So then that's how you get the oscillation of the little title as it pushes in and pushes out. Okay? But that's kind of high level, high level, how you can start with essentially hello world with a few lines and evolve that into something that works in VR. Where was my hash? Right. Cool. Let's start that back up. I deleted my sprites, which is why we now have this. Did I make this a Git repo? Please tell me I did. Git status? It looks like I did. Git checkout. My game, sprites. Good. Hey, my sprite's back. Cool. Awesome. All right, so we're going to head into the second half of this. We have about 5 minutes for any follow-up questions. What do we got? Any questions?
It's somewhat off-topic.
Off topic's fine.
Okay. Really basic workflows for like generating some assets.
Okay. So the question or general, I guess, would be what general thoughts do I have on generating assets and creating assets for video games, right? Full disclaimer, all the video games that I've made so far have been with ASCII art. So I kind of sidestepped the assets issue by saying, I'm just going to use ASCII. NetHack is one of my favorite roguelikes too. But for generating assets, you do have assets packs that you can get online. What I would recommend is to find an artist and have them generate the assets for your game. And with regards to like pricing, work with someone. Trust the work that they do if they do good work. For me, I've done situations where I've done a revenue share or profit share. That's really hard to do if you don't have that precedence on previous successful releases. You can expect to pay $30 for an hour for asset creation, or like maybe $5 to $1,000 of just a straight drop of assets. It's not. It can be a lot of money, but I think if you position your game, work on it incrementally, and we'll actually discuss that in the second half that's coming up, I think you can make it affordable and manageable. Question? And if there's any other game dev, like the business of game dev questions, please feel free to ask.
I was wondering if you take that approach with the music, or do you use that synthesizer to actually make your music yourself?
Right, so with regards to the music for Flappy Dragon was actually created by one of my colleagues. He's in the game dev community in the Dallas area, Nick Culbertson. I have another game in the App Store called A Noble Circle, and it's a narrative reinterpretation of Flatland Romance of Many Dimensions as a rhythm-based vertical platformer, of course. And for that, I actually collaborated with a musical composer in Brazil, and so he got a percentage of revenue for doing that.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome. But yeah, sound synthesis, it's a totally valid way of doing it. I can do the art. I can do the programming. Music is one of my weaker points, and at that point, it's like, find something. Any other questions?
Yeah, so with the VR, so you have these, you have your sprites in 3D space, right? So you
Correct.
have some
You have
Z
your sprites in
direction.
3D space.
Do you also have support for things that basically stay with the camera? So like, if you have like some like, I don't know, score or something like that on the top right of your screen and you always want that to be there, how do you handle that?
That's a good question. So as far as things moving around in the camera and the actual, I would call it the render space. Let me show you a YouTube video real quick, and it might help speak to what that render area looks like. This also is generally applicable for your 2D games too. When you build a 2D game, aside from the resolution that exists outside on the native screen itself, your logical resolution is always going to be 1280 by 720, right? So the far right of the screen is always going to be 720 pixels. Bottom left is 00. Top right is 1280 by 720. Y is down at the bottom, not up there. When Mario jumps, Y goes positive. It does not go negative. A lot of graphical rendering engines put Y at the top because that's how monitors render. I wanted to save your sanity and put Y mathematically and geometrically at the bottom. So with regards to VR, you've got the same general aspect to it. So 000 is going to be at your room scale in the bottom area, in the bottom left corner. 1280 by 1280, it's a square, will be in front of you. 1280, 1280, 1280 will be right behind you. What you see here are these grid lines that show explicitly where everything is. When you transition a game from a 2D game to a 3D game, it will actually scale and look like a theater screen in the VR environment. And your center point, you're located at 640 Z. So you're at 640, 640, and 640. So here you're seeing me kind of move the room in the skybox. Past you look behind you. Of course, everything's backwards because you're looking at the back of a label, right? And then you can see the scale come up and down. Right now, we don't have the specific XYZ coordinates of the headset or your little joysticks. That will come later. For right now, our target is third-person omniscient, camera omniscient games where you're controlling like an external character. And then over time, we'll provide the capabilities to have headset location, pointing trajectory locations for your joysticks and all that good stuff. But carefully moving forward through this development process and making sure each part feels good. Any other questions?
Hi, you showed the game running in WebAssembly. How difficult would it be to get the game to scale to the browser window size?
All right, so the question was that we had the game running in WebAssembly. How difficult would it be to get the game to the browser size? Inside of itch.io, they have an option where you can scale it, where you can fix the scale or let it go full screen. So that was like just the whatchamacallit, the iframe that it was set to. So it will expand to the size of your browser automatically.
Does that require additional development to get things to scale?
There is no additional development required because of the 1280 by 720 pixel ratio that we have. It will always scale to that. We letterbox around it. Some of our pro capabilities will allow the ability to have aspect ratios past 1280 by 720. And so you can do like ultra wide displays, portrait mode, some of those things. 4K displays with auto upscale and whatnot. And with that, the way that would work is that your safe area and your center will be in the center of the screen, so you can draw into the negative space. So for those that don't have a huge screen will get letterboxed in the 1280 by 720 environment. Those that have a full screen fidelity will get that extra real estate, but it won't affect someone that doesn't have that. This was something that I had to deal with a lot on the mobile side of things. I think Android has 15,000 different variations of aspect ratios to OS, to input models and everything. So it was something that I really had to know how to get right. And that will translate over. You're welcome. And now translating over to VR too for that same reason. Any other questions? Are you liking it so far? As far as the workshop, kind of working through the code? Cool. All right. So let's move on. Let's move on to some of the more advanced stuff. Well, let me check Discord. Everything's good on Discord, it looks like. Okay. Disconnect the Oculus. Let's connect this thing now. Boop. Where's my pen? There it is. Where's my screen? Right there. I'm supposed to press this button. And then I'm supposed to do this. And I'm supposed to do that. All right. Accept. All right. So, and then I close the screen. Fantastic. All right. I've been doing, I guess, commercial game development for about 7 years now. And I've learned a few things with regards to building games as an indie developer. And one thing that's really important is this idea of Ruby giving you magic. But I also want Ruby to give us superpowers to where we can build our own things and potentially create means of sustainable income, independent of a salaried position. And the best way I can explain it is that we have a superpower. We have the ability to tell a arbitrary computing machine to do things for us. It's synonymous to what I feel would be like literacy back when literacy wasn't prevalent, where 99.0% of the population didn't know how to read. If you knew how to read, you had a superpower. And as far as the 21st, we're in the 21st century so far, I think, math. 21st century's literacy is programming, right? Until we get the ubiquity of every person in the entire world being able to program, this gives us that superpower. One of the goals is with game development, with Dragon Ruby, is to help with that literacy. But for now, I would try to take advantage of it. So here's some of the lessons that I learned over me trying to take advantage of this superpower, okay? So the first thing you want to think about is when doing indie game development is you want to think about the perfect 5-star review. I have horrible handwriting. I'm gonna blame that I'm on this like tilty thing. That's why it looks bad. Perfect 5-star review. And the reason we want to think about it this way is I usually hear pitches for video games. Someone will come and say, I've got this great game idea. It's gonna have this really cool AI, and it's gonna have this awesome physics thing that can support a million various particles, and it's going to be a shooter, and that's great. That's a way to describe your game. it's rare that you'll see a 5-star review giving accolades to those things that you just gave to me, right? So when you're thinking about the product that you want to build and that perfect 5-star review, you want to put yourself in the seat of the person that's doing the review. And chances are the review will probably not care about the particles or the AI. They'll probably say something like, you know, that shooter was really awesome. I loved the fact that I was a teddy bear getting espionage information from the penguins from zoo, that one, Kowalski status, whatever that movie was. There we go, Madagascar. Whatever that movie was called. Yes. I mean, that's the review you'll see, right? Or by the end of this game, you know, I was brought to tears because of XYZ happening. And the value of doing 5-star reviews like that is that it removes you from the actual like mechanical aspects of your game and allows you the freedom to change that as long as it retains that general feel that you're going for, okay? So try to think about that and focus in on that feeling, on that perfect 5-star review over just the mechanical aspects of your game, all right? Number 2, build something small. Build something small. Please. What you want to target is something that you can build in 3 months part-time. That's kind of the scope that I try to push for. And the idea behind it is we've got some games that people put as their favorite games. Let's look at your favorite 2D games. We have Celeste, Metroid, Mega Man. Let's do Mega Man. I like Mega Man too. All right. So let's say Mega Man is one of your favorite games. When you think of Mega Man, think about everything you love about Mega Man. All the cool things that Mega Man has in there. Well, think about Mega Man as a game in its entirety. You've got boss fights, you've got power-ups, you've got crazy levels, you've got a really annoying wall kick that I can never get right. It's not one of my favorite things. Environments that affect other environments, just a list that goes on and on and on. And when you're thinking of that favorite game, I want you to remove something from that game in your head. Remove something from game. And ask yourself, is it still your favorite game? If the wall kicks were removed from Mega Man, and the stages were redone so that I never have to do a wall kick again, would it still be my favorite game? Yes, it would actually be better. If I removed all of the stage and environment effects in the game, would I still enjoy it? Yeah. If I removed the power-ups, would I still enjoy it? No, I actually really like the power-ups. I would remove the part where I have to find them all and just start with the power-ups. That would be awesome. What if I removed the levels? I would still enjoy it. All the platforming, just remove all of it. Remove all the enemies, I'd still enjoy it. The one thing, the small focus piece that I loved about Mega Man were the boss fights, right? So when you're thinking of building something small, think of that perfect game, the game that you love. Remove as much as you can from it and focus in on that one piece that makes the game why you like it, okay? And that focuses in on something that could potentially be released in a 3-month time frame. So if I was building Mega Man X in this 3-month build something small scope, I like the music. Music was freaking cool. And I like the boss fights, and I like the power-ups. Which power-up did I like? I liked the ability to charge this primary blaster all the way up to maximum and see that explosion happen. So can I build one boss with a pretty decent soundtrack and that charge-up explosion? I probably could. And then in another 3 months, I could have another boss. And these incremental things can then compound and potentially create some kind of sustainable income. All right? Next thing is when building things like this, you're not shooting for $1 million game. Do not quit your day job and try to make it as an indie game dev. It is risky. It is very risky. What you want to do is you want to look at your hyper niche audiences. Okay? So I promise you that this game that you really love, Mega Man X, let's say, there are enough people out there on the internets that love exactly that part of the game. Okay? It's about finding those people and catering to them and this hyper niche audience. There isn't a lot of competition in these realms, and it's a means for you to build sustainable income. As an example, a ridiculous example, there is a subreddit about emus. And it's, if you go to About This Community, this is real. Welcome to the internet, I guess. Great Emu War. There's a Wikipedia about this. All right. So let's read this. The Emu War, also known as the Great Emu War, was a nuisance wildlife management military operation undertaken in Australia over the latter part of 1932 to address public concern over the number of emus said to be running amok in the Campion district of West Australia. The unsuccessful attempts to curb the population of emus, the emus won. A large flightless bird, indigenous to Australia, employed soldiers armed with Lewis guns, leading the media to adopt the name the Emu War when referring to the incident. While a number of birds were killed, the emu population persisted and continued to cause crop destruction. There is a subreddit with 82,000 members dedicated to the Great Emu War. You build a video game where you control the emus in a strategic war effort against returning military personnel from World War II, and you become a good citizen of this subreddit, they will support you and your game. Okay? Generally, what I think about when determining lifetime revenue for a video game, I'll take the number of members on the subreddit. If you take that number, like 86,000, if you multiply that by 1.3%, that's going to give you a number of people. Someone can do the math if they'd like. I would also take that number and multiply it by 2.8%, and that'll give you another number. Okay? What these numbers represent is the potential sale, the potential chance of someone purchasing one of your properties over the lifetime of your property. Not necessarily in 1 year, but over time, your long tail, you're looking at a conversion rate about anywhere from 1.3 to 2.8%. Okay? So you think of a game idea, you think of a very niche hobby that you have, you build some small prototype, you become a good citizen of that community that you can cater to, and you put the game out there and see what happens. Over time, they'll know who you are, and at 3 months per game, you build enough games, residual income, cross-promotion of your games, you're going to end up with some mailbox money at the least. Okay? You can expect, if you make $5,000 per annum, that is amazing. Amazing. 50% of the apps in the App Store never get downloaded. The of the apps that are downloaded, I think only 5% of the apps ever hit that 5,000 per annum. And then, of course, it's like a hockey stick. The top apps make millions upon millions of dollars. Don't compete with them. You can't compete with them. Those people, the same people that build those million-dollar apps are not trying to build a war simulator for people that are obsessed with emus. But that's where you can grasp and capture the market and take out your competitors, than the other people that build emu games. Don't do that. Maybe do that. That would be hilarious. Okay. So I think those three lessons were paramount and very, very important when learning to build these kind of things. Okay. Any questions? Questions, comments, stuff? No questions? Wait, we've got a couple. We've got some things in the pre-workshop list. Let's look. Notable differences, mRuby and normal Ruby, yep. I'm interested in making a game available to play through the browser. Yep, so the WebAssembly. Specifically, I like to communicate with the server like Rails. You have HTTP capabilities inside of Dragon Ruby, okay? So if you look at your sample apps, you can see how to do an HTTP GET and an HTTP POST. HTTP. You can retrieve an image, shows you how to pull images, and general multiplayer over HTTP. We don't have TCP or WebSocket support. UDP and TCP stuff is on the to-do list, just a matter of aligning it with someone that's actually trying to build something that leverages those things. Yep, that's our open source repo. All right, I think that's everything there. Any questions on the Great Emu War? I think that's a fantastic name. The more ridiculous the name, the better. So much I didn't know about Australia, yes. There we go. Any other questions?
Any examples of isometric games?
Any examples of isometric games? Yes. Can you? Yes. So we've got top-down. Just kidding. We've got tactical. There it is. You have a hexagon and isometric. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. Boop. There you go. Right? So you can kind of see like the deletion of stuff, and here's a tile set. Just throw up random tiles. Cool. It's all 2D, but you just kind of stack it in the right way, and this is a good starting point for you to just kind of jump in and do your thing. All right? So that's inside of genre, RPG tactical, and then you've got your isometric grid there. Any other questions? Questions, comments?
Yeah, I've got another one. What would you say are some differences, like maybe advantages and weaknesses compared to something like Godot?
Okay, that's a good question. So the question is with regards to, like, why would you use this over Unity, Godot, GameMaker, some of the other various engines out there? Our primary things as far as what Godot offers you versus what we don't. One of them is shaders. We have no shader APIs on the 2D environment right now. Interestingly enough, yesterday, one of our partners, Ryan C. Gordon, he actually was awarded a $40,000 grant from Epic Games to add shader capabilities to SDL. That's our rendering engine behind the scenes. So that work is going to start. But right now we don't have shader support, but we have huge, massive company backing in the form of a grant, which is nice. Another thing is with regards to Godot. I think Godot and Unity both have a means to provide like native UI controls, so you can actually put a button on the screen with text boxes and check boxes and stuff like that. For our stuff, you got to hand roll it. We've got samples like the heads-up display where typing and cursor movement and everything is available, but if you need native controls across devices that are legitimate OS-centric native controls, we don't have that capability. You would have to write a C extension to do that kind of stuff. Another thing is there's a question about, well, you guys are unproven. You know, Godot and Unity, there are games that have been built out there that use those engines. And that's a true statement. We're young relative to the other game engines. And from that perspective, all I can do is communicate the ideas and the aesthetics and the reasons and the motivations that were created for building this game engine. And proof in the pudding is that we eat our own dog food. I have games that are released to a lot of platforms, to all these platforms that use this engine. Can that same thing be said about Unity and Godot? Do the companies that run Unity and Godot have games on these platforms? Something worth asking. Another interesting thing is I love hearing Ruby is slow. Because then I go, oh really? Oh really? So here we have, I'm going to go to, so this was, all right. So I am attempting to render 20,000 sprites to the screen. Of course, you didn't see all of it. There we go. Still further down. Come on. How far do I have to go? There we go. All right. So this is 20,000 sprites rendering to the screen using Dragon Ruby 3.0. All right. We're settling in on a frame rate of about 50 FPS, 48. I'm going to do the same thing with Unity. And the frame rate is settling down to 9 frames per second. The source code is available for both of these things on the YouTube video, so you can compare and contrast. One interesting thing is that you're going to see this like little artifact here. See the little vertical, that like line showing up? It's kind of hard to see. See it right there? This is deficiencies in their RNG. So you get to a high enough number, you start seeing these kind of artifacts come up. You can even see it here. So there's like uniformity issues with regards to their RNG generation. And so these flaws exist. Another interesting thing, look at the size. We're 5 times faster in rendering sprites and 1/8 the size of these other engines. Okay? I mean, we have to fix this world in that sense. And actually, that brings up another lesson I learned. Have you all heard the term beat the averages? Beat the averages. Okay. So there's an idea of best practices out there. I love that word. I hate that word. This is best practices. And in reality, best practices is average practices. It is what is considered the average possibly working thing for an organization to adopt. Okay? I think a better word is calling that on meta. Okay? So you've got the current meta. The current meta is to use ABC as your frameworks and XYZ as your frameworks. Okay? What that does is it frames the decision of using something on meta with the opposite being something off meta. Okay? So if you hear best practices, what's the opposite of that? Worst practices? No, it's not worst practices. It's off meta. So with Dragon Ruby, the premise there is that it's an off meta solution. And there's value in doing off meta because it gives you a competitive advantage. Okay? If you think about a normal large business, if they employ best practices, they will generally see a increase in revenue proportional to other large companies that also employ those best practices. If you use best practices of a large organization as a startup, what are the chances of you ever succeeding? 80% of startups fail. And employing best practices of a company that is tens of thousands of times larger than you and expecting to reach a revenue, even if you hit an 8% increase in revenue. What is an 8% increase in revenue of $100 a month? It's not a lot. Hitting $100 a month is very difficult, okay? So using best practices, the current meta is potentially a risk to your organization if you're just a lone indie dev. You have to go for off-meta solutions, okay? There's actually plenty of evidence out there of off-meta solutions winning, especially in video games. Super Smash Brothers Melee. The current meta was Marth, Sheik, Fox, and Falco. And then someone comes in with an off-meta solution called Jigglypuff and Pikachu and ends up upsetting the environment. No one knew how to play against those players, and they had those competitive advantages. You have off-meta solutions in various occurrences. So when you're working with your own things, you have to beat the averages. You have to think about off-meta solutions. And Dragon Ruby is one of those things. We have hot load. We allow you to prototype as quickly as possible. We beat the averages and the productivities that these other engines give you. Hello World and those engines is not 3 lines of code. Right? That's what you're betting on. Cool. Any other questions?
On a related note, that was against, say, Unity or another framework. I'm building a thing that's basically a stocks and flows simulation. It doesn't need gravity. At what point do you decide to use a framework as opposed to roll your own with a clock?
Okay, that's a good question. So the general question was that there are things in those engines that come out of the box, right? You've got your built-in physics, you've got your built-in collision, you've got your shaders, you've got your particle emitter, and right now my stuff is a square box because I haven't found the artist to build my thing, and I have no music, and it works. And then the question is, well, what's going to happen if I keep iterating and building on these, and then I need this physics engine, or I need this ability to create shaders or particles and whatnot. And what I've so one thing is that is something you want to take into consideration. If you know up front, I definitely need X, Y, Z, or it's going to be a failure for my company, then 1, you need to identify that, and 2, actually test it. So there's a common mistake where I'll hear blah, blah, blah has awesome physics and collision. And then I ask them, have you actually tried it? Have you actually tried creating or replicating this, and does it actually work? Or I'll hear cross-platform, it supports cross-platform. Have you tried deploying cross-platform? And if it doesn't work, is that a deal breaker for you? And you're going to find very quickly, if you try to do some of these physics simulations, try just creating cross-platform output for Mac OS, iOS, Android, and Windows and Linux, and HTML. A hello world, and see if it works. The results will surprise you. But yeah, for those things, do the due diligence. I think that's very important. And don't take the marketing material at face value. That's a very common mistake that I've seen made over and over again. Any other questions? Cool. All right, so we got about 30 minutes left. Let's go through some of the games that were presented, or our favorite 2D games. All right, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So let's look at some samples for that. So Castlevania Symphony of the Night, it's a platformer of types. It uses something called axis-aligned bounding box collision, which means that your stages and all the tiles are set up in squares that are not rotated in any form, okay? So axis-aligned bounding box, doing collision physics against that is actually pretty straightforward. It's not terrible. So if we look at our physics and collisions sample apps here, let's run that. So this was the sample app that I had running. This allows you to create your boxes. You can actually fall through if the box height is one deep. Once you create your boxes that look like that, you can't actually fall through that. So for something like Castlevania, you'll want to look at these physics and collision sample apps that provide these mechanics here. For Mario, we've got a Mario sample app here somewhere, maybe moving objects. That's the one. You remember the Bowser Bridge? There's Mario. I got to work on assets. Those are the hammers. That's a lot of hammers. Holy crap. Ah! Game over. I'm going to change the code, get rid of that. Haha. All right. So you've got hammer throwing in Mario. Let's see. We've got you want to create a vertical platformer. There you go. This is one of those examples. Try doing this in an engine that claims their physics and collision are awesome and easy to do. If you can't build this in less lines of code in those engines, consider that suspect, because it's actually really freaking hard to create this. You can actually see like the what's it called? The acceleration, of course I fell off, of the platform is taken into consideration. So you've got your vertical platformer there. So that's Castlevania. Let's see what we've got. 3 and 3, it's a puzzle game. I actually watched a quick preview video of that. There's a lot of like clicking and UI components in there. If we look at mouse, you've got your mouse click capabilities. I think I've got a tic-tac-toe sample app somewhere. Arcade, there's a tic-tac-toe sample app somewhere. Where is it? I thought it was in mouse. Mouse click, maybe, please. Hey, there we go, tic-tac-toe. So you've got some general logic on your tic-tac-toe board. So there's some puzzle elements in there that leverage tic-tac-toe. We've got crafting, a crafting sample app that kind of shows you how to do mouse movements. So you can do that. Put that in this grid. Here we go. Put that in here. Drop that back. Put that up. Merge that into that. Right. So you've got some crafting aspects taken into consideration. Let's see. So that covers that. Celeste. Interesting thing with Celeste. Celeste was originally built with something called Pico 8. It was actually done during a game jam. They got some really great feedback. They built something small, had that focus mechanic, I was talking about, and they decided to end up making that in porting that over and putting in Unity. Very successful game. How many think they used in the built-in physics and collision detection in Unity? There's no way. No way. No, they didn't. They did a full write-up on how their physics and collision ended up working, and some of the things the considerations they had to make. The box collision sample app that I showed you previously with regards to Castlevania, that will be applicable to something like Celeste. You'll want to think about how to do wall kicks. I'm not a fan of wall kicks. I'll probably make a sample app for people that are. Metroidvania, we actually have a sample app that's like called Metrovania. If we go into physics and collision again, and we go to, where's my Metrovania sample app? I knew I had it somewhere. Does anyone see it? No? Box collision 2, I think that's what it is. Yep, so you've got your square little layout. And This one kind of just flies. But you've got your collision there. This is your sprite selection here. So there's a sprites folder. If you replace those, you'll see you'll be able to select replace the sprites in there. You press E to export, and then this map data is saved for you to take advantage of. Okay. I forget if Metroid allows you to. I think it allows you to actually push through the bottom of the box, but your general Metroid capabilities are there. In Metroid, there's also a concept of a camera. With regards to camera location, you'll want to look at advanced rendering. And you've got a couple of different cameras. This one is a simple camera. This allows you to kind of follow a camera on a render space, right? You can zoom out and then zoom back in. And then as far as how the edge behavior, this is another one of those gotchas. Think about the camera capabilities and the game engines that you want to use, and try to figure out how easy it is to make it such that the camera centers on the person, but when it hits the edge of a screen, does not flow past the edge of the screen. Okay? It's surprisingly difficult to set up, and you'll find that what is provided out of the box requires more customization than originally expected. We do some fancy things here. We've got a split screen camera. This one's kind of cool. So this is something that you would definitely, wait, that's the same one. This is something, these will definitely help you in building a game like Celeste and Castlevania. Boop, now you've got split screen. Splits to the right, and splits above, and then combines together, if I can find, there we go. If you want to create a game with Z targeting, right? A little bit of math there, but you can kind of see the rotation happening for the character. I don't rotate the sprite, but at least you can see the screen coming in and rotate. Okay. All right, what else do we got? Mega Man X, we had that, Too Hard to Pick, NetHack. We've got roguelike samples. Show you those. There's a genre here. Genre, dungeon crawl, roguelike. There we go. So here's your starting point for a roguelike. You've got your tile map in there. You've got movement, some logic around movement itself. Can't move into squares occupied by an enemy. You've got line of sight. So you can kind of see the path show up, move back, and see it fade away. Final Fantasy, general RPG, you've got your UI elements as far as the audio mixer sample app, same application of the puzzle. Yoshi Safari, you've got the hammer. We got the hammer throwing logic that we had in there. You got the general platforming. You've got the Mario samples, Chrono Trigger's an RPG. Jazz Jack Rabbit. I have not played that game. Let's skip that one. Limbo. Limbo is a beautiful game. The visual aesthetics are something that are probably, they use a lot of shaders. You could probably get a really good artist to kind of replicate a lot of the things that were done in there. But that's one of those things where, like, if you want to build a game like Limbo, what kind of limitations can you play with as far as what's available from its visual fidelity? Aside from the visual fidelity, the actual game mechanics and stuff, it'll use the same collision concepts there. Another challenging thing with Limbo is that it doesn't use axis-aligned box collision, so there's actually diagonals that you have to take into consideration. And that makes things a little bit more complicated. You're gonna have to look at, there's a technique called ray tracing, where you get collision bodies by finding the point in collision on a specific trajectory of terrain. There's a sample app called A Noble Circle. I mean, not A Noble Circle, the Little Probe, that provides some of these trajectories and stuff. It's also has some pretty nice music in there. So this has the debug constructs in there also. This is also for a game jam, so it's not the most prettiest code, but you'll kind of see some of the collision trajectories there. See the little green line around that. There's some tunneling challenges that can occur. It's something that I need to expand on, but these are the kind of complexities that you would generally have to reason through. Okay. So Limbo is definitely one of the tougher ones. Hollow Knight, the visual aesthetics are amazing. It's one of those things again where if you're using shaders and some of the bloom effects, you've got the blend modes, but if that's the deal breaker for you when you're partitioning down to those specific things that are helpful, like the thing that makes you love the game, if that's your deal breaker, you wanna take that into consideration. Isometric, we have the sample up there. Fire Emblem is your RPG stuff. You've got some tactical grids there, depending on how you want to render that. Wario Land for platformer, The Incredible Machine. I know of this game, but just not enough. I think it's like you make like a Rube Goldberg machine. I'd have to really look into that to kind of see like what gaps exist for that. Stardew Valley, we have a farming sample app. So one of the sample apps, genre for crafting, and there you go, you've got your farming stuff. Press J to plant, and now you can't run into the plant. And then you can press J again to plant another thing. So there's your farming sample app as a starting point. There we go, cool. So we have 15 minutes. I have stickers for everyone that we can give out, and I can walk around if you want to try to build something, hack on stuff. I can answer questions during this time period also. Okay. Go Beans. Thank you.